Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the most captivating, informative, and shareable moments featuring John Oliver on Last Week Tonight.
I've been looking at the prison conditions in America, and the whole system is just so horribly broken.
Number 30, Trump's second term. Losing his bid for re-election in 2020 did nothing to stop Donald Trump's determination to return to the White House. In this segment, Oliver focuses on how consequential a second Trump term could be, thanks to Project 2025, an initiative from conservative think tank the Heritage Foundation to reshape government.
Trump plans to require local law enforcement agencies to use measures like stop and frisk, cut funding for any school that has a vaccine or mask mandate, and impose a universal tariff of at least 10% on all imports.
The authors, who include former Trump officials and close allies, recommend replacing thousands of federal employees with loyalists.
Basically, it's a new designation that would reclassify around 50,000 career civil servants as political appointees, meaning they wouldn't have civil service protections from getting fired, and whoever replaces them could be hired on loyalty, not on merit.
Oliver expresses horror at both the long and short-term implications of removing checks and balances.
This is about so much more than just one election or indeed one candidate.
Trump has since distanced himself from the project, saying he knows nothing about it and disagrees with some points. Number 29. Police. 2020 was a watershed moment for awareness of police brutality in the United States, with the death of George Floyd at the hands of an officer sparking nationwide protests. Oliver devoted an entire show to the issue, particularly police responding to peaceful demonstrations with violence.
It's genuinely impossible to overstate how enraging that is.
He also focuses on the long history of racism within police departments, the difficulty of making meaningful changes, and clarifying the defund the police movement that was growing at the time.
It's about moving away from a narrow conception of public safety that relies on policing and punishment, and investing in a community's actual safety net, things like stable housing, mental health services, and community organizations.
He wraps things up by showing a powerful clip of author Kimberly Jones, speaking to just how much subjugation Black Americans have undergone for generations. Oliver is practically speechless.
And they are lucky that what Black people are looking for is equality and not revenge.
That's our show. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Number 28, Tucker Carlson. One of the most recognizable figures in modern media, Tucker Carlson regularly drew millions of viewers to his Fox News program, Tucker Carlson Tonight. With this segment, Oliver explained precisely why that was an issue.
Our military needs to become, as Joe Biden says, more feminine, whatever feminine means anymore, since men and women no longer exist.
What are you talking about, you performatively outraged wedge salad?
Breaking down his tendency to make bad faith arguments, inaccurate claims, and bigoted statements, he shows why Carlson's influence is so potentially dangerous.
The main narrative of Tucker's show is that power is being taken away from you, his viewer, and that this needs to be resisted.
He also finds time for some great and very specific name-calling towards the personality.
Oh, off, Tucker, you relentlessly indignant picket fence.
Since leaving Fox News in 2023, Tucker Carlson is arguably much less prominent than he was several years ago. But Oliver's takedown of him still holds up. Number 27, Psychics. Even if you don't believe in the legitimacy of those who claim psychic abilities, you might think of them as mostly harmless. In this segment, Oliver explains why these supposed clairvoyants shouldn't just be ignored as a novelty.
So tonight, let's take a look at the psychic industry, particularly one of the most insidious parts of it, mediums.
Discussing how lucrative the industry can be and how that opens the door for people to be exploited in their most vulnerable moments, he shows how harmful they can be.
When psychic abilities are presented as authentic, it emboldens a vast underworld of unscrupulous vultures.
He also makes it clear that his gripe is not with people who believe in psychics, but those who take advantage of others for profit. Things conclude with a guest appearance from regular collaborator Rachel Dratch, playing a spoof of a certain New York-based TV personality.
Now, Wanda, when did you first realize that you had incredible psychic abilities?
Oh, well, it was right after I saw a thing on TV about how much money psychics can make, and suddenly I was like, oh, me too!
Number 26, WWE. The world of professional wrestling is both incredibly entertaining as well as incredibly dangerous, with performers putting their bodies through serious ordeals.
I would argue Every other show should just be called, unfortunately, not a guy exploding through a table, and this show should very much be included in that.
In this segment, Oliver focuses on the biggest wrestling franchise, the WWE, and how its stars are exploited, at times with fatal consequences. Much of his focus is on former chairman Vince McMahon and how his in-ring persona as a villain isn't a total exaggeration.
They live this lifestyle.
What are you doing, you weird man?
Though Oliver acknowledges that he might not strike viewers as a wrestling fan at first glance, he highlights both why it's such a popular form of entertainment and why it's so vital for those who make it possible to be treated fairly. Number 25. The monarchy. The British monarchy is a long-standing institution whose existence many don't think twice about, meaning it is the perfect subject for John Oliver.
The monarchy's defenders argue that whatever money the royal family cost is vastly outweighed by what they bring in. It's the exact same argument thousands of men have made to their wives about investing in crypto, and it's going really well for them right now.
Famously unafraid of going after his homeland, the British Oliver discusses the less glamorous side of the royal family in the wake of Queen Elizabeth II's death and Charles's crowning, including their taking advantage of tax loopholes and historic ties to racism.
You can't say you're just a symbol and bear no responsibility for how the institutions that you are the head of behave.
He also debunks the idea of the monarchy as being some kind of sacred cow that shouldn't be scrutinized.
Instead, they've continued working hard to be perceived as a mere symbol, while never taking responsibility for what that symbol excused.
If we didn't think he would object, we'd crown Oliver the king of informative television. Number 24. Subway. Though the scandal regarding spokesman Jared Fogle might be the biggest one associated with sandwich chain Subway, it's by no means the only one.
Let's talk about Subway, where it came from, what its business model is, and why there are so many of them.
In this segment, Oliver talks about the fast food giant and the shady business practices they engage in. Key among these is how franchisees lose significant income to company-mandated fees.
So, if Subway decides to change the menu or redesign the stores, franchisees may be on the hook for those costs. Also, if the company announces a promotion or a discount, stores may have to go along with it, even if it is a money loser for them.
He even pokes fun at the shameless product placement for the chain in various media, such as in Korean drama series. In true Oliver fashion, things end with a biting spoof of one of these shows. We can always count on Oliver for some fresh satire.
안 돼.
왜?
들어간 게 진짜 거기가 아닐 수도 있어.
Number 23. A History of Chuck E. Cheese. At the beginning of a segment regarding home ownership, Oliver humorously directed his under 35 viewers to go online and instead view one about Chuck E. Cheese. And this wasn't just a tossed-off gag.
When we started writing something about Chuck E. Cheese for you, we were thinking this will be 5-6 minutes tops. But the more we looked into it, the more fascinated we got. And this officially got out of hand.
Oliver devotes some 28 minutes to telling us all about the entertainment chain and its rather incredible history. Sharing clips of the original, more ornery Chuck and talking about his love for the animatronic band, he sounds more and more elated with every moment.
Come on. That there is a star. Just look at Mother Darling. Face beat, body snatched, hair teased so much it's in therapy as we speak.
His deconstruction of the film Air Bud was another clear example of Oliver's ability to dig deep on a subject, no matter how frivolous it might seem.
I just find it fascinating that a movie, the sole premise of which hinges on a strict adherence to rules, chooses to discard them so quickly on such a whim.
Number 22. Environmental racism. Oliver has a knack for showing how intertwined certain issues are. Case in point, his examination of environmental racism. In this segment, he focuses on how communities of color are disproportionately subjected to pollution and other environmental hazards.
And the first major factor to consider here is history.
With companies seemingly given free rein to contaminate these areas, with no concern for the well-being of those affected, he is justifiably outraged. The testimonials from residents put this harrowing matter into even clearer, more devastating focus.
Why don't I move? Huh, now you mention it, I hadn't even considered moving away from Cancer Alley.
And it's one that won't go away unless serious reforms are made.
It is local activists on the ground who've been working tirelessly to fight for their communities and to gain concessions, and they deserve much more support from larger environmentalist groups.
Through this informative piece, Oliver demonstrates just how intertwined malice and indifference are. Number 21. Supreme Court ethics. The U.S. Supreme Court may try to brand itself as an impartial branch of government, but that's not the impression many citizens have of it, especially recently.
When it comes to what ethical rules the court is required to follow, there basically aren't any.
Oliver talks about how justices on the court can be easily compromised with little in the way of consequences. Much of his attention is focused on Associate Justice Clarence Thomas and the numerous gifts he's received from wealthy donors and other clear conflicts of interest.
The fact is, a justice's wife inserted herself into efforts to overturn the last election, yet in multiple cases involving January 6th, Thomas didn't recuse himself.
He ends the show in amazing fashion by offering Thomas a brand new motor coach and $1 million a year in exchange for leaving the court within 30 days. Thomas did not follow through, but that doesn't diminish the incredible boldness of Oliver.
How is this legal?
Number 20, Dr. Oz and dietary supplements.
But on Capitol Hill Tuesday, he was on the hot seat.
Excuse me, but any seat Dr. Oz is sitting on is the hot seat.
One of the standout moments of Last Week Tonight's first season is this segment on Dr. Oz, an accredited doctor and future Senate candidate whose hit show was considered by many in the medical community as a modern-day version of a traveling snake oil salesman.
Have I got something miraculous for you, ladies and gentlemen? A monkey's paw mixed with 5 petals of a rose and a thimble full of otter semen. Guaranteed to cure your lumbago. Step right up here.
John Oliver covers the doctor's Senate hearing, as well as Oz's use of his profession to legitimize unproven products.
The only problem with the Dr. Oz effect is that magic pills don't technically exist, and Dr. Oz knows that.
Do you believe that there's a miracle pill out there?
There's not a pill that's going to help you long-term lose weight and live the best life without diet and exercise.
However, the deeper focus of the editorial is the lack of regulation concerning dietary supplements, which is the result of the unbelievably legal practice of lobbying.
Beyond embarrassing Dr. Oz, there's very little that Congress can do in this arena. It is the Federal Trade Commission's job to go after online scams, and even they, Gail, can only scratch the surface.
She's right. Dr. Oz is just a symptom of the problem. The disease is the fact that dietary supplements in the US are shockingly unregulated.
Oliver tops the segment off by schooling Dr. Oz and the supplement industry at their own game by showing them how to pander properly, complete with puppies, t-shirts, celebrities, music, and dancing.
People love t-shirts. They love t-shirts almost as much as they love celebrities dancing. And guess what? Here's Steve Buscemi tap dancing.
Number 19, tobacco.
Tobacco. It used to be a cornerstone of American life. It was how we knew sex was over before the female orgasm was invented.
Despite its sharp decline in popularity in America, the tobacco industry continues to be profitable, thanks to emerging markets overseas.
Is this the best time ever to be a tobacco farmer?
Probably the most profitable.
Wow. So it's an aging product that's decreasing in popularity, and yet somehow it just can't stop making money. It's basically the agricultural equivalent of U2.
Last Week Tonight covers the subject, emphasizing tobacco companies' litigation against any attempts to mitigate the marketing of their deadly products, such as the plain packaging laws in Australia, as well as poorer countries such as Uruguay or Togo, who cannot afford expensive court cases.
Philip Morris International, a company with annual net revenues of $80 billion, basically threatened to sue Togo, whose entire GDP is $4.3 billion. And when your GDP is only a couple of billion more than the box office of Avatar, a protracted legal case is not really what you need.
The biggest impact of the segment, though, is the introduction of Jeff, the diseased lung in a cowboy hat, a mascot parodying the Marlboro Man.
I present to you the new face of Marlboro, Jeff, the diseased lung in a cowboy hat.
While the show sent Jeff t-shirts to Togo and put up billboards in Uruguay, and Jeff appears whenever you do an image search for Marlboro on Google.
It's Jeff! It's Jeff, everyone! It's Jeff, the diseased lung! Look at him, Marlboro!
Number 18, the state of journalism. John Oliver may have said that he's not a journalist, but he sure does care about the work that journalists do. He'd already taken a harsh look at the war between advertising and news back in season 1. Then in season 3, he devoted a segment to how corporate desire for clickbait stories was killing the viability and integrity of local news.
And what better way to win the trust of your readers than posting first underneath your own article?
This gave him a chance to poke fun at how clueless some conglomerates were, especially when it came to selecting their name. The bit culminated in a parody of the Oscar-winning film Spotlight, imagining it being set in the current journalism landscape.
And I think we could prove that they knew.
Yeah, I'm just not sure what kind of clicks we're going to get on that.
Number 17, sex education.
Sex education. The conversation that animals in zoos refuse to let you not have.
In this piece, Oliver looks at the state of sex education in the USA, with particular attention given to its inconsistency.
There is no required standard for sex ed in this country. In fact, only 22 states mandate that kids receive it, and only 13 require that the information presented be medically accurate, which is crazy. You wouldn't accept a history class not being historically accurate. Prince started the American Revolution in 1984, and his purple reign lasts until the present day. Class dismissed.
Sex and sexuality are something most people will have to deal with at some point in their lives. And Oliver points out the absurdity of America's varying approaches to the subject, which can range from genuinely informative to downright backwards.
And Utah's law prohibits any instruction in the intricacies of intercourse, for reasons that one state legislator explained.
Those are the things we do not want to be taught in our schools. Those are things that should be taught in your home.
Wait, taught in your home? Here is an exchange that has never happened. How are you so good at sex? I was homeschooled.
The editorial concludes with a simple, direct look at sex education, parodying the less than accurate sex ed videos showcased earlier, narrated by celebrities.
Look. No one ever said being a teenager is easy.
You have to face a lot of important decisions. But no decision is probably more important
than the one you'll make about becoming sexually active.
This segment is an excellent example of Last Week Tonight's tendency to highlight social or governmental issues that could use some improvement, and doing it in a way that's enlightening and entertaining.
If you get a chance to have sex with this man, go for it.
Number 16, Alex Jones. John Oliver knows how to accept a challenge. When he poked fun at infamous conspiracy theorist Alex Jones as part of a segment on media figures that President Trump listens to, Jones dared him to dig deeper and present a more rounded picture. And that is exactly what Oliver did.
Jones has repeatedly used his show to fuel speculation that the Sandy Hook massacre was staged by the government, which has been deeply hurtful for the parents.
The comedian devoted an entire segment to Jones, highlighting the fact that most of his Infowars show is actually about selling his own line of overpriced products with dubious health benefits.
They are coming for you! They're coming for all of us! But first, McGillicuddy's oatmeal.
Oliver even brought out his own fake doctor to endorse fake products, further mocking Jones' questionable credentials. Sometimes, Alex, you get what you ask for. Number 15, Televangelists.
Churches, America's favorite place for redemption and sixth favorite place for chicken.
While it may be hard to believe that they're still around, the show's spotlight on televangelists reveals that they remain fixtures of television, and wealthy ones at that.
There is a pattern of preachers wanting high-end airplanes, and when they get them, they're not always particularly humble about it.
I had enough money to buy a beautiful Cessna Citation jet, cash. And since there's so much jealousy in this room tonight that I can feel over this, a few weeks later, I bought another one worth 3 times what that one was. Cash. Act happy over my blessing, folks.
Ooh. I bought a jet, cash. I bought a bigger jet, cash. F*** the haters, act happy for me. That's not a sermon. It's the first draft of a Rick Ross single.
Oliver highlights the practices used by the TV preachers to get rich, with particular emphasis on seed faith, which is essentially asking people for money and promising good karma in return.
The argument is, sow your money in the ground and you will reap returns multiple times over. Except, as an investment, you'd be better off burying your money in the actual ground, because at least that way there is a chance your dog may dig it up and give it back to you one day. Good boy.
He also illustrates the gaping tax loopholes that allow televangelists to get away with their verbal robbery, culminating with a demonstration of the process with the creation of his own short-lived real church, Our Lady of Perpetual Exemption.
Brothers and sisters, welcome to Our Lady of Perpetual Exemption. I am your Mega Reverend, thank you, brothers and sisters, your Mega Reverend and CEO, John Oliver, and can I tell you, I am so blessed tonight. So blessed to be joined by my radiant wife, Wanda Jo Oliver. Please welcome her. Wanda Jo. Wanda Jo, praise be.
The church had to close down after people got a little too literal with the seed metaphor.
We are also not closing down because you kept sending us actual seeds, even though we explicitly told you not to.
Number 14, $15 million medical debt payoff. John Oliver isn't afraid to put his money, or at least HBO's money, where his mouth is. To cap off a segment on predatory debt buyers and the need for regulation, he announced that he had formed a debt-buying company and bought $15 million worth of people's medical debt, allowing him to legally demand the full amount owed. Instead, he decided to forgive all of it with the push of a big red button. This $60,000 purchase ended up beating and almost doubling Oprah's record for, as Oliver put it, the largest one-time giveaway in TV history. More importantly, it bought much-needed relief for many people.
You, Oprah!
Number 13, the 2015 Canadian federal election.
Canada, the country you think about so little. That's it. End of sentence.
Originally airing the literal night before the election was due to take place, this segment focused on explaining the electoral process, while also sharing a few hilarious scandals and detailing the major nominees for Canada's 3 major political parties.
And it's not just photos. There's also embarrassing videos out there, like this one, in which he explains his party trick of pretending to fall down a flight of stairs.
Let me show you how it normally works. I put a person here, and I'm passing, so it's like, hey, how are you?
What? Look. No one is saying that is behaviour worthy of a head of state, but you cannot deny that it is somewhat satisfying to watch a soul-patched man named Justin with a French accent just fall down some stairs.
Oliver pays particular attention to then-incumbent Stephen Harper, whom he calls banal but evil.
For instance, Harper's government has passed numerous laws weakening Canada's environmental protections. They've scaled back healthcare for some refugees, which a federal court called cruel and unusual. And Harper himself has taken an extremely strong position on marijuana.
There's just overwhelming and growing scientific and medical evidence about the bad long-term effects of marijuana. We've spent a couple of generations trying to reduce the usage of tobacco in Canada with a lot of success. Tobacco is a product that does a lot of damage. Marijuana is infinitely worse.
Are you high? Marijuana is not worse than tobacco. The only context in which that's true is aesthetics. Look at Paul Newman, okay. Now look at whatever the this is.
The crowning jewel of the proceedings, however, is Oliver's response to a law forbidding non-Canadians from trying to influence their elections.
No person who does not reside in Canada shall induce electors to vote or refrain from voting for a particular candidate. And apparently, anyone found guilty of doing that could be fined up to $5,000, given a 6-month jail term, or both. That is a ridiculous law, and I guess what you're saying, Canada, is you want to dance?
What follows is an over-the-top request not to vote for Harper, accompanied by music, pantomime animals, and Mike Myers dressed as a Mountie riding a snowplow.
I love Canada, but the fact that it has a law banning outsiders from telling Canadians how to vote is one of the least Canadian things possible.
Sure.
Oh, and don't vote for Stephen Harper.
Number 12, North Korea. While Last Week Tonight may be famous for in-depth takes on domestic issues, Oliver proved that he can also explain and poke fun at hot-button international topics when he devoted a 2017 main story to escalating tensions between the US and North Korea.
Fake news, goodbye!
He started with President Trump's war of words with Kim Jong-un, and then moved on to talk about North Korean culture and life in the dictatorship. Along the way, we learned of the North Korean love of the accordion. So, Oliver invited the most famous accordion player in America, none other than Weird Al Yankovic, to close out the segment with a song.
Please don't nuke us, North Korea. Right now we're all a little tense.
Number 11, U.S. presidential scandals.
The 2016 presidential election, or as it's more commonly known, the electoral equivalent of seeing someone puking, so you start puking and then someone else is puking, and pretty soon everyone is puking 2016.
The U.S. presidential election of 2016 dominated news for a few years, and the two candidates' major scandals are examined here in great detail.
Listen, We have had scandals during campaigns in the past, from Barack Obama's financial dealings with Tony Rezko, to George W. Bush's Air National Guard service, to the revelation that Dwight D. Eisenhower's middle initial stood for D's nuts. But this campaign, the scandals have been so pronounced. Polls show that less than half the electorate sees either candidate as honest or trustworthy.
Oliver pays particular attention to Hillary Clinton scandals, namely her email server and the Clinton Foundation controversy, explaining the complicated details in an understandable and funny way.
First, she says everything I did was permitted, which isn't remotely true. The use of a private email server would have required prior approval, and she never asked for it. Then she blames not being technically capable, which is a fine excuse for your dad when he accidentally texts you the letter Q 10 times. But it's pretty shitty coming from a Secretary of State. And then she caps it off by saying the whole thing is kind of fun, which it definitely isn't, unless every single one of her emails was just a JPEG of a dog dressed as Dracula, in which case... yeah, you know what, that is kind of fun.
He then contrasts Clinton's wrongdoing with Donald Trump's, mentioning that over 50% of the Republican statements were found to be false by PolitiFact, and that he has committed far worse, far more often, and with significantly less scrutiny than Clinton.
Is where it's instructive to compare her to her opponent, Donald Trump, America's wealthiest hemorrhoid. Because... if you are struggling with the idea of voting for Hillary because of all this, you need to take a long, hard look at Trump. If you're irritated by her lying, that is understandable. But he's quantifiably worse.
Oliver finishes the piece off by using an incredibly effective visual demonstration of the difference between the candidates, arguing that while Clinton has more scandals than someone should, they're nowhere near as many as Trump.
Typical failings in a politician are like raisins in a cookie. They shouldn't be there. They disgust people. But most politicians have at least a few raisins, and Hillary is a cookie like this one. She arguably has more raisins than average. There's probably 10 of those little fuckers in there. But we all need to remember that when it comes to Donald Trump, this is the amount of raisins that he represents.
Number 10, coronavirus. When coronavirus arrived in 2020, almost no other country in the world was hit as hard as the United States.
Can you get the coronavirus by eating Chinese food?
In the beginning, Oliver was quick to criticize the American media and vague government responses to the outbreak in March 2020.
2% of people disappearing was literally the premise of The Leftovers.
While Trump and his administration downplayed the seriousness of the situation, Oliver insisted we take no chances with COVID-19. And his words have aged like milk.
We have contained this. I won't say airtight, but pretty close to airtight.
Well, which is it? Because airtight versus close to airtight is a pretty crucial distinction.
With the virus spiraling out of control in the US late into the summer, Oliver expanded his coverage from home to include the pandemic's effects on essential workers, the unemployed, the incarcerated, and the dangerous spread of coronavirus conspiracy theories.
Why would you close the beach? You've got sequences in the soil, in the sand. You've got healing microbes in the ocean, in the salt water. That's insanity.
Yes, it is. Everything that you just said is insane.
Number 9, the Dalai Lama. John Oliver doesn't do interviews that often, but when he does, he usually speaks with someone quite noteworthy. We're talking Dalai Lama level noteworthy, or in this case, the actual Dalai Lama. After explaining the Tibetan spiritual leader's role and the problems China is causing with his succession, Oliver played the interview he had conducted with the prominent Buddhist in exile in India.
You don't, to me, look like an evil wolf.
The pair touched on serious topics like Tibetans self-immolating in protest of China and the possibility of the current Dalai Lama being the last, before Oliver lightened the mood by presenting his guest with a calculator watch.
Roosevelt may have given you a fancy watch, but that is water resistant.
Number 8, the 2015 FIFA corruption case.
The World Cup is one of my favorite things, but it's organized by these guys. FIFA. You either know it as the Fédération Internationale de Football Association, or that soccer video game you have?
Few subjects have received as many segments devoted to it on Last Week Tonight's first few seasons as FIFA, the organization in charge of international football, and the corruption charges against its officials.
We are a non-profit organization, and we have to remain a non-profit organization.
A non-profit with over $1 billion in the bank.
Yeah, but this is a reserve.
A reserve? A reserve of $1 billion. When your rainy day fund is so big, you've got to check it for swimming cartoon ducks. You might not be a not-profit anymore.
John Oliver's passion for the sport is really evident throughout all of the coverage, and the various pieces are easily some of the best the show has ever put out.
But a report by the International Trade Union Confederation, for example, has estimated 1,200 deaths so far, with up to 4,000 additional worker deaths by 2022.
Now, even if all those are not directly related to the World Cup, those are still natural disaster numbers. Weather services should start issuing FIFA warnings. A stadium is being planned in your area, evacuate immediately.
Some highlights include Oliver promising to endorse products he finds gross or tacky if their companies pull their sponsorships from FIFA, which he delivers on, and his memorable feud with former FIFA Vice President Jack Warner, which included purchased airtime on Trinidad TV and an announcement accompanied by dramatic music and jets of fire.
So to you I say this, Jack. If you really want to continue to trade shit-talking videos with increasingly high production elements, then consider your challenge accepted, my friend. Because you have magnificent music under yours. Well played. Well, I see your music choice, and I raise you fire.
Number 7, we got him. Even at his most ridiculous, Oliver can be quite serious. In what became a recurring bit, he uses the comedy trope of an over-the-top, though premature celebration to declare, "We got him," when he'd catch President Trump in a lie. After the marching band or basketball-dunking tiger came out, he'd tell them to stop because Trump was still president.
Thanks for coming in. I'm sorry, he's great. So, I'm sorry, guys. That was great, though, but thanks for...
This helps Oliver make the point that the benchmarks for what will end a political career keep moving. And what would have tanked a presidency months ago won't anymore. Number 6, government surveillance.
Our main story tonight is government surveillance. And I realise most people would rather have a conversation about literally any other topic, including, is my smartphone giving me cancer, to which the answer is probably, or do goldfish suffer from depression, to which the answer is yes, but very brief.
Government surveillance in America is a frightening and uncomfortable subject, but also one that John Oliver handles with grace.
Section 215 is overseen by a secret intelligence court known as the FISA Court, and they've interpreted it to mean the government could basically collect and store phone records for every American, the vast majority of whom, of course, have no connection to terrorism, unless Aunt Cheryl has been gravely mischaracterising the activities of her needlepoint club. It's a sleeper cell, isn't it, Aunt Cheryl? You will hang for this, Aunt Cheryl. You're a traitor and a terrible aunt, not in that order.
He focuses primarily on detailing what programs like the Patriot Act allow the U.S. government to do, as well as Edward Snowden's leaking of the information that revealed the scope of the government's reach, while also touching on the public's surprisingly blasé attitude about surveillance.
A year ago, a former congresswoman was discussing the 215 program on the news. Watch what happened.
This vast collection of data is not that useful and infringes substantially on personal privacy. I think at this point we should seriously consider not continuing
Congresswoman
Section
Harman,
215.
let me interrupt you. Congresswoman, let me interrupt you just for a moment. We've got some breaking news out of Miami. Stand by, if you will. Right now in Miami, Justin Bieber has been arrested on a number of charges.
Half of the piece's runtime is devoted to Oliver traveling to Russia to interview Snowden himself, which made headlines around the world.
How much do you miss America?
You know, my country is something that travels with me. You know, it's not just a geography.
Well, that's already a way too complicated answer. The answer is, I miss it a lot. It's the greatest country in the world.
I do miss my country. I do miss my home. I do miss my family.
Do you miss Hot Pockets?
Yes. I miss Hot Pockets very much.
Despite being a comedian first, Oliver managed to ask plenty of tough questions of Snowden, while maintaining an air of humor.
Executive Order 12333, dick or no dick?
Yes. EO 12333 is what the NSA uses when the other authorities aren't aggressive enough or they're not catching as much as they'd like. For example...
Okay, so how are they going to see my dick? I'm only concerned about my penis.
Number 5, net neutrality.
We need you to get out there and for once in your lives, focus your indiscriminate rage in a useful direction.
Not only can John Oliver mobilize his fans, he's also pretty good at getting those who don't like him to take action, provided they have a common interest. He proved this twice, both times with a hilarious and informative defense of net neutrality. After comparing putting lobbyists in charge of regulation to hiring a dingo babysitter, he challenged everyone to comment against a two-tier internet.
It's almost as if they've agreed to stay out of each other's way like drug cartels.
Then, in a 2017 follow-up, he mocked FCC Commissioner Ajit Pai's jumbo coffee mug and plugged a URL that took people directly to the FCC comment page.
Instagram models, Tom from MySpace if you're still alive. We need all of you.
Both times, the FCC website crashed. Number 4, the Brexit referendum.
The United Kingdom, birthplace of the Beatles and yet very much the world's Ringo.
Brexit, the nickname for the June 2016 referendum in which voters decided whether the UK should exit from the European Union, has been controversial and financially tumultuous.
Brexit doesn't sound scary, it just sounds like a shitty granola bar you buy at the airport. Hey, this tastes like a preserved owl pellet, f*** it, I'm going to Cinnabon. You push me into it.
John Oliver covered his homeland's referendum before it was actually held. In the segment, he explains the basics of what the European Union is, identifies its proponents, examines their arguments, and points out their party's history of xenophobia and nationalism.
The family's only been here since the 70s. You're not British enough to be in our parliament.
Whoa there. Just hold up. Not British enough to be in our parliament. He's talking about a British citizen who was born in London and raised in Hampshire. How is that not British enough? Must he literally be a monocled badger named Reginald who lives in a shepherd's pie?
Like many other Last Week Tonight stories, this one wraps up with a musical number, this time in the form of a plea for Britain to remain with the EU, while still insulting it, as sung by a barbershop quartet. It's not often you hear young boys belting curse-laden songs about economic unions. Number 3, prison. This early Oliver segment really set the tone for quite a few long-form reports to follow. It took a serious subject, in this case the staggeringly high rate of incarcerations in the US bolstered by the private for-profit prison system, and explored it with cold hard facts, examples of the human side of the story, and, of course, the host's unique wit.
50 deaths! At this point, you could hire the people who pretend to be doctors on Grey's Anatomy, and you would probably have a lower mortality rate.
Oliver closed the segment by calling back the fact that Sesame Street was now talking about prison, before interacting and singing with his own version of Muppets about the topic.
Our prison population is bigger than Slovenia.
'Cause we put people in jail instead of treating schizophrenia.
Informative, insightful, and funny. This bit is Oliver at his finest. Number 2, Donald Trump.
Our main story tonight, and I cannot believe I'm saying this, is Donald Trump. And I say that knowing that every time his name is said out loud, he has a shattering orgasm.
While John Oliver and Last Week Tonight have tackled Donald Trump numerous times, this in-depth look at the then frontrunner for the Republican Party nomination for the US presidency is by far the most successful and the most biting.
Donald Trump views the truth like this lemur views the Supreme Court vacancy. I don't care about that in any way. Please f*** off, I have a banana.
Oliver debunks Trump's biggest selling points: his temperament, his honesty, and his success, none of which are as substantial as Trump claims, while also highlighting the candidate's dangerous inconsistency when it comes to policy.
I don't know David Duke. I don't believe I've ever met him. I'm pretty sure I didn't meet him, and I just don't know anything about him.
Really? That's your best answer there, because you definitely know who he is. Partly because you called him a bigot and a racist in the past. But that's not even the fucking point. The point is, with an answer like that, you are either racist or you are pretending to be, and at some point, there is no difference there.
However, what elevates the piece is when Oliver hits Trump somewhere he actually values: his name, which is also his brand.
Trump does sound rich. It's almost onomatopoeic. Trump. It's the sound produced when a mouthy servant is slapped across the face with a wad of $1,000 bills. Trump!
Oliver reveals that the alleged billionaire's family name used to be Drumpf, a moniker that he feels is much more befitting of the ignorance, bluster, and incompetence of the man himself.
It's the sound produced when a morbidly obese pigeon flies into the window of a foreclosed Old Navy. Drumpf! It's the sound of a bottle of store-brand root beer falling off the shelf in a gas station mini-mart. And it may seem weird to bring up his ancestral name, but to quote Donald Trump, he should be proud of his heritage.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Coal. We all figured John Oliver would be sued one of these days. Oliver, though, knew exactly what bit was likely to prompt legal action, and shared the info with the audience during this segment. When talking about the bleak future for coal mining jobs in America, he brought up a cease and desist letter the show had received from Murray Energy's lawyers, and went on to talk about the company's CEO, Robert Murray, anyway.
I have to proceed with caution. I'm not going to say, for instance, that Bob Murray looks like a geriatric Dr. Evil.
Within days, Murray's lawyers launched a defamation suit against Oliver and HBO. Apparently, the segment's squirrel mascot, Mr. Nutterbutter, was not named as a co-defendant. Oliver went on to win the defamation case against Murray, which served as the perfect introduction for a 2019 episode on strategic lawsuits against public participation.
Trump sued that man for $5 billion. And think about that. That means if Trump had won that lawsuit, he would have been worth $5.2 billion. That's a lot of money.
What John Oliver moment do you always return to? Let us know in the comments. Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.